Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a book that's going to make you think. It's called Happiness and Education by Noddings, and it asks this really simple but kind of radical question. What if the whole point of school wasn't just about grades or getting a job? What if it was about something bigger?
And this quote from Noddings, wow, it just hits you, right? She says when she told people she was writing this book, they were puzzled. But they don't go together, they'd say. And I think we all kind of get that feeling, don't we? The idea of happiness and education in the same sentence, it feels weird, almost like they're opposites. So that's what we're going to dig into today. Why is that?
All right, so let's start right there with that puzzle. Why does the whole idea of being happy at school feel so strange? Where does that feeling even come from?
Well, it turns out this disconnect goes way, way back. We're talking Aristotle level old. For centuries, education has basically built this hierarchy. At the top, you have the intellectual stuff that schools love. Abstract subjects, pure theory, things like algebra and geometry. But way down at the bottom, you've got the practical skills, the things that are, absolutely central to how most of us actually live our lives and find happiness, like making a home, being a good parent, or just understanding ourselves and others.
And that leads Noddings to ask this question that honestly just stops you in your tracks. Think about it. Why do we insist that every single child must learn algebra, but we teach them almost nothing about what it actually means to make a home? When you really let that sink in, it's kind of mind-boggling, right?
Okay, so if the way we're doing things has this massive blind spot, what's the alternative? And Noddings isn't just talking about a few small changes here. She's suggesting we need to completely rethink what school is even for.
I mean, think about the conversation around schools today. If you listen to politicians or read the news, it's almost always about one thing, the economy, right? It's all about competing in a global market, boosting the nation's GDP, and making sure kids can get good jobs and make good money. That's pretty much the whole game. But what Noddings is pushing for is so much bigger, so much more human. In her vision, the real goal of education should be to help us become our best selves. It's about developing the whole person, our talents, our character, learning to find satisfaction in what we do, and really understanding who we are. It's about creating a good person, not just an efficient employee.
And this is really the heart of it all. She argues that happiness shouldn't just be some lucky accident that might happen at school. It should be an explicit goal. A good education, she says, should actively, deliberately contribute to both our personal happiness and the happiness of the community around us. It should be a core part of the mission.
So, okay, if happiness is the goal, what are we missing right now? To illustrate this, Noddings does something really clever in her book. She imagines a conversation between an educator and a visitor from another planet, and this outsider's perspective really shows how weird our school curriculum is.
So the visitor looks around and says, it's strange. Your people spend so much of their lives making homes, raising kids, and just enjoying life, but you almost never talk about these things in your schools. It's such a simple, obvious observation, right?
And the educator, a guy named Ed, gives the classic answer. He says, well, that's because school is a specialized place. We do academics here. All that other stuff, that's supposed to be taught at home. And that's the argument we've all heard a million times, right? It sounds logical.
But then the visitor comes back with the killer question, the one that exposes the massive flaw in that whole argument. But what do you do, the visitor asks, about the children who come from homes where these things aren't taught well? And crickets. The question just hangs there, because our system has no answer for that. It's a huge gamble.
So this is what that missing curriculum looks like in our personal lives. It's all the stuff that's absolutely vital for a happy life, but gets almost zero attention in the classroom. Things like how to make a home, how to be a good parent, how to develop your own character, how to build strong relationships, or even just how to understand your own emotions.
And this isn't just about our private lives either. This same kind of neglect, this same blind spot, it totally extends into our public lives, especially when we talk about the world of work. Our school system pretty much operates on a single track. It's this one-size-fits-all academic path that's really designed to prepare everyone for college and a very specific slice of professional jobs. But what about the student who would be a phenomenal mechanic or an incredibly talented beautician who could build a thriving business. Where do they fit in?
The system, without even saying it, kind of looks down on those paths. It doesn't teach kids how to find happiness and dignity in all kinds of work. It doesn't teach them to respect different talents and jobs, or how important community is, or what it means to be a happy citizen in a democracy.
Okay, so this is all great as a big idea, but what does it actually look like in a classroom on a Tuesday morning? How can we make school a happier place in a really practical way? Well, Noddings gives us this perfect, concrete example.
So picture this. You've probably seen it or maybe even lived it. The teacher calls on a student, we'll call him Boris, to come up to the board and solve a math problem. Fractions, let's say. And Boris gets up there and he's stuck. He's panicking, and the whole class is watching. It's this moment of public failure, of anxiety, and just pure misery.
Now, Noddings suggests a really simple but powerful change. First, stop the cold calling. Instead, send students up to the board in pairs. And you change the framing. It's not a test anymore. It's a team project, a shared exploration. Suddenly, if they succeed together. And if they get stuck, they struggle together. The fear just disappears.
And this idea goes beyond just activities. It applies to the content itself. Take poetry, for example. We tell kids we want them to love poetry for their whole lives, and then we make them pick it apart for a test, which, let's be honest, usually kills any joy they might have felt. Nodding says some things, like poetry, should just be offered as gifts, no strings attached, no tests, just shared for their beauty and their wisdom.
Now, to be clear, this isn't about getting rid of challenges or making school easy. Learning involves struggle. That's part of it. The key insight here is that students who are in a generally happy, supportive environment are just tougher. They're more resilient. They're way better equipped to handle those tough moments, learn from them, and keep going.
So we'll leave you with this final thought, a question that really sums up everything Nell Noddings is asking us to consider. What if schools prepared students not just for a career, but for a life? What would that look like? That's a question that's definitely worth thinking about.